All right then, welcome back to the Foxhole. Foxtrotting in a Foxhole, Season 10, Episode 3, number 291 overall. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan, coming to you from Eagle's Nest 2, Studio A, on a chilly Thursday, on the 4th day of December. How y'all doing? Yeah, it's a crazy week out there. As always, we thank the folks at Road and Zoom, Potensic, for providing wonderful tools for content creation. Shout out to the folks at www.purpleplanet.com as well for the tunes and other sources out there. Want to be on the podcast or be on Aftershocks or The Scene? Drop me a line, ftinfx@gmail.com. Call the hotline 541-525-0896. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. A lot more this and other FTINFX media content will be appearing regularly. Definitely something we're pushing forward here as we move closer to 2026 and deeper into season 10. Best is yet to come, folks. All right, let's get cracking here with episode 291, Open FaceTime. Well, I will give you this. Talking Heads. No, not David Byrne, Tina, and the crew. No, the Talking Heads, the sports media. They sure have a way of making headlines and staying on the radar even when they shouldn't. You'd think the month of November that Stephen A had, picking a fight with everybody to stay relevant. Now that the mouse, ESPN, Disney, has sidelined him from the NBA, I was like, okay, Gio. And Skip, who's getting no love. So I guess Skip, Ernestine, and Stephen A were out for dinner in Beverly Hills. And it was all over my feed. I was just thinking, this is interesting, given two people whose light bulb is kind of flickering right now. Not a lot of attention unless they create their own, which, hey, it takes a lot to maintain a brand, I suppose. Yes, he winks. You've been bad lately. You've been really bad. What do I mean by that? Because you could take your pick, whether it's on Facebook and Instagram, where you see something about, hey, would you eat a 58-year-old taco? And I'm just like, really? Who the hell's generating this stuff? And then you're killing people off. And then they have to come on social media to say, no, I'm alive and well. And this happened twice last week. Oddly enough, with two NFC, well, North now, but it used to be Central, or as we used to call it, the Crack and Brew Division back in the day. But with legendary Carl Eller, part of the Purple Gang or Purple People Eaters, and the legendary Lions cornerback Lim Barney, both killed off by the internet. And you'd see it, and people go, oh, I had somebody close to me when it came to Carl Eller. And I was sitting there going, let me go do some backtracking. You have to do this now when you see anything on the internet, especially when it comes to people passing away, just to make sure before you go on social media and give your condolences, RIP, whatever the case may be. Are we that desperate for engagement and clicks that we're going to stoop to traumatizing people or and having them come out, having their people say, what the F? And especially in the case of Carl Eller, who, it's like, hey, man, I'm out here making posts and still doing my thing. I mean, I think Lim has actually been in convalescence in his later years. But still, as his people said, alive and well. Thanking all the well wishers out there and whatnot. I just think it's crazy. Yeah, internet. Yeah. I guess this is the theme of this open face. Because how about this high school coach mystery? This guy in Virginia, he's supposedly a legend. You know, his teams are good. And vanished. Of course, it comes out a couple of days later that child pornography and trying to solicit a youngster and all kinds of ugly stuff. You know, wife coming out just. I mean, I feel so bad for her. What's she gonna say? I mean, good for her that she scrubbed her social media accounts, right? You know, everybody coming at her, but you have to imagine, you know, the situation she's in right now, where she doesn't want to believe this, and this guy was a pillar of the community. His team's undefeated, getting ready to play for the state championship, and all of a sudden, the stinky shoes where you stepped in an orchard of manure. In this particular case, as far as the allegations are concerned, I haven't found this guy yet, and I don't think they're going to, unless he is that dude and he's going to be living on the fly somewhere. Something tells me he went out in the woods and just ended it for everyone. Because at this point, when you're on a pedestal like he was, and you get innocent until proven guilty, but you know when there's smoke, there's usually some fire. Allegations on that level, you know that can't be good. Anyways, we'll follow up when there's more info on that. Then you've got the weird. This is a weird one for me because okay, at some point in this lifetime, we were all dipshit kids doing stupid stuff that if we got caught, probably would get us a stern talking to by school officials or the threat to go to juvie or whatever the case may be, even into young adulthood, you know, college. So I don't know how to feel about the Eagles' offensive coordinator, Rotulio. His house was egged following the loss to Chicago. It's Eagles fans we're talking about here. You know, they boot on Santa Claus, beat each other up, and are nasty to everyone. So, following a humiliating loss, well, I'll talk about it more later. But I swear, isn't this funny? Every time I'm doing a podcast or aftershocks, nobody ever calls me until I'm recording. Anyway, I just think that fans getting so pissed, figuring out where the dude lives, and going to egg his house. It's not the worst thing. Of course, the internet just flipped out and talked about what a bunch of entitled brats sports fans have become. They've always been that way. And I'm sure this isn't the first coach to have his house egged. I just think at this point now, because everything is so sensationalized, it actually got on everyone's radar that this occurred. Yeah. But the whole thing with Rodney Harrison on Saturday Night Football, I was obviously the comms were on, so I tend to not watch when my team was playing all the pregame foo-foo. But apparently, what he just totally froze and had, and couldn't speak and was kind of twitching out or something like that. I guess he appeared later in the broadcast, which I also didn't see because we lost the damn game. So, I'm not going to watch the post game after a loss. Yeah. He says it's all good, but yeah, that's pretty trippy. I'm sorry I didn't catch that and really didn't have a chance to take a look on the internet to see what everybody was talking about as far as scare goes. But apparently, business as usual. All right. Got it. I find this one interesting. So CJ Stroud back in the lineup, making things happen, as I talked about in Aftershocks. This is interesting, though. So his dad is in the Gray Bar Hilton. Yeah, he's been locked up. And CJ says, "Don't worry, Pops. I'll hook you up with a job with my foundation when you get released." Well, I just thought that was interesting. What? Well, unless you guys were on bad terms, of course you would hook homie up. I mean, we know how tough it is, even if you aren't a felon. But if you have a foundation, like, hey, Pops, don't worry, I got you covered. shouldn't that be a given? Especially if you're not on bad terms with Pops? But nonetheless, good for you just saying, yeah, dude, I got your back. Don't worry. When you get out of the clink, you'll be rolling. Okay. Man. Like I said, it was a crazy week as far as open face goes. I didn't have any problems finding bullet points. Probably could have been, probably would have had enough things to talk about to easily speak another 15 minutes. But how about this one? Ric Flair, who seems to be unhinged, him and his daughter both, Charlotte the Queen. But Ric Flair coming out and saying Hulk Hogan died from street drugs because he couldn't get the prescriptions he needed from his doctor. And his family looking at Hulk's family, that is, looking around the room like, what? Now maybe he's got some inside dope that nobody else knows about, but I get the feeling I'm thinking that, yeah, Rick, probably Charlotte, you should probably talk to who's ever watching your dad. Take away the phone. Maybe take away the keyboard because you probably don't need to be going on social media or whatever platform saying stuff like that. Especially if there's no basis. And even if there is, why would you want to do that to Hulk's people? Just saying. Okay, I'm all for this one. I really am, okay? Dylan Gabriel. Yeah, that Dylan Gabriel. Supplanted by Shador Sanders. His fiance dropping shade on the Browns. I love it that you're standing up for your boy. You know, did a stint here in Eugene playing for the Ducks, and I think he has been done dirty by the Browns. So I like it. But you know, Honey Bear, I hate to break it to you, the world doesn't care about your boy, and even if he got done dirty, this is Shadur's world, and you, me, and everybody else that have no love for the guy have to deal with it. You can do all the shades you want. Nobody's gonna feel bad for Dylan pulling the splinters out of his boo boo on the bench. Just saying. Boy, that Clay Thompson, he's had quite a early season. You know, getting into it with Ja, general manager getting told to hit the bricks. Cuban taking a bigger stance. The emergence of Cooper Flag. Then I find out that he is so in love, this Clay Thompson, son of Michael. He's renaming his boat MTS. Gee, why is he renaming his boat MTS? Because apparently the love of his life, Megan Thee Stallion, is rocking his world. That, yeah, I'm enjoying this so much, I'm going to name my boat after her. But you didn't have that on your 2025 scorecard. And I bet you didn't have this one either on your 2025 scorecard. Remember Lavernius Coles, receiver that played twice with the Jets, also had a stint in DC before Santana Moss. There was a point there where it seemed like the Redskins and the Jets were doing trades all the time with one another. Decent receiver, you know, not Hall of Fame and stuff, but you know, had a career. I guess he just did everything it took and passed the exams and all this kind of stuff, but he's becoming a Jacksonville police officer. In your post NFL career life, you decide to put on the blues and go chase the bad guy. Yeah, I would never have had that on my scorecard, or I wouldn't have had this on my 2025 scorecard to be fair as well. Apparently, there are O pins for cats. Yeah, you know the weight loss thing. O pins for cats. And I'm sure the cat's looking at you like, hey, so what, I'm overweight. Given cats being who they be. Yeah, look at it. Yeah, I can see the expression on a cat. You're guaranteed to probably get some poopy in your sheets from the cat or in your shoes. Okay. On that low note, we will We will exit open face, and when we return, we will check out the craziness on campus from high above. See you in a sec. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan, here on a gray, chilly Thursday. Checking in here at 48 degrees, but it feels a lot colder than that, people. Alrighty. Nonetheless, I get our homies and homettes together, sprint down to the Eugene airport during the lunch hour, so West 11th will be a party. Boogie on through TSA, smiling with our shoes on, slapping, fist bumping, all that good stuff along the way till we get to the tarmac where our shimmering Gulfstream G650 awaits us to get to our cruising altitude of 43,000 feet, where we will take the high view above the campuses of America. I had a lengthy conversation on Aftershocks 18, even though during the recording I thought I was 17, but I forgot the live stream was 17. Yeah. Anyway, we talked quite a bit about Lane Kiffin and the craziness. We need to rehash that there. More about now, just kind of watching the reaction, watching the various shows, and it's a mix of indignation and some just acceptance of, as I was saying the other day on Aftershocks, the variables that are affecting the system or the institution. And yeah, he doesn't come out looking any better now that we've had a minute to marinate this. There's no. I mean, it's hard to define this right now. We've been talking about this since 2020 when we entered this realm of craziness. And now the multi-headed monster is reaching maturity, and there's no way to control stuff. The narrative is gonna be who's shaping the conversation at this point, because obviously there's nothing in place to stop somebody from doing what he just did in season, and until there is, we're gonna have this chaos. Right? All of these little loopholes, workarounds. They want something done, but they don't really want to, especially if you are, in the robber baron class. You're in the cash and carry group. You don't care. I mean, you can talk all of this stuff, but you like that there's all these loopholes that you can poach coaches and players and all kinds of things. So, yeah. I think it is interesting, though. The flip side of it is when you see something like Kalani Siaki, excuse me, probably butchered that, as I always do when it comes to the names, spurning Penn State to remain in Provo. Wow. I'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes down the road. What else can we tell you, though? Well, Jonathan Smith, to no surprise, and Mr. Stoops down in Lexington, a little bit of a surprise to me, are told to hit the road. I think both have buyouts in the neighborhood of 30 million, which is not bad, especially for Jonathan Smith going from Corvallis, hopping to East Lansing. Okay, I didn't get the job done, but if I don't take a job, yeah, I still walk away with 33 million in the pocket. Not bad for that, dude. Something tells me both of these guys will land on their feet So that's all cool. Obviously, a lot of coaches, as I talked about on Aftershocks, found destinations. Got the Alabama assistant coming up the road to Corvallis. I'm really curious to see how that's going to play. You know, said all the right things in his introductory press conference, but at this point, who the hell doesn't? Anytime you get somebody that's connected to one of those top shelf programs, it's going to open your eyes. And we have to wonder who's going to be, you know, are they going to be the next Coach Sig? Or are they going to be Jonathan Smith or Deshaun Foster? You know, right? You just, this is an interesting time. Duh, that's pretty cliche, but it is. Because of the success of a Coach Signetti at Indiana, and then what you've seen with Jonathan Smith, or even a higher tier Brian Kelly. You know, everything is it's hit or miss because there ain't no in between anymore, honey. In between, get your ass on the street, and if you're lucky, you're in a good enough situation where you and CAA have arranged for a nice payout when you do get told to hit the bricks, right? Okay. On the field, Texas slapping A&M. Now what? Well, if based on everything I'm hearing, in spite of Sark being on TV earlier in the week making his case, and people like Colin boo-hoo-hooing, the Horns will be on the outside looking in when the college football playoff is all the spots are determined. That's just the way it goes in this landscape. Impressive wins that you lose to Florida and get your ass kicked by Georgia. You know what? We're gonna take out a team like Oregon or somebody else like that. No. And all this hate on Notre Dame, like I said the other day, Notre Dame has its following. So do the Canes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oregon winning up in Seattle, nice win there. And I didn't think the Huskies had a chance, or they're just not. I remember I said this was kind of a measuring stick game for the Huskies to see if they were ready to complete their end of the bargain as far as killing off the old Pac 12. Because, as I like to say, way too much. USC, UCLA, and Washington, I'm looking at you going, you all bought into this nonsense because you're going to do what in the Big Ten? Well, I look at Oregon, and Oregon's sitting there flexing. Oregon's like, it made sense for Oregon to make this move. But the other three, mm-hmm. Ohio State battering Michigan at the Big House. Ryan Day getting the monkey off of his back, so to speak. You have to wonder. Not that I agree with some of the people all the time that are making these statements. But the in-house hiring thing, sometimes it just does not go the way it's supposed to. And I would think that's probably more often the case. And it's probably why when someone like Jim Harbaugh walks away, blow the whole damn thing up. In spite of you winning a national championship and like it'll all be good as part of the staff. Continuity, you don't have to spend the money. But then again, you get 3 or 4 years down the road and everybody's angry and all of a sudden you're paying somebody a buyout. Right? Okay. Yeah, I mean, as I said on Aftershocks the other day, the primary season is blazing hot. The crying tells, the woe is me, and I did this, we did that. Full. I mean, right? It's fully formed out right now. And that's the beauty of college sports. And as I said on Aftershocks the other day, I find it really intriguing, if not downright hilarious. All of the blowback all of a sudden the CFP. I was watching Colin and Bruce Feldman on The Herd just before I started recording, and he's just completely beside himself. Bruce Feldman was about. We saw the show they have, the CFP show, and one guy, the mouthpiece, the guy from Arkansas, basically talking out of both sides of his mouth, making no sense. And Bruce Feldman is right. They are moving the goalposts to justify whatever ESPN and the other vested entities have in this. Right? So you can make all the cases you want, which is interesting because of all the lather people have for the Canes. I mean, it's clear that you pull 8 or 9 people in the media, this is real media people, and they're like, oh, yeah, I love with Miami's in the. So, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame is Notre Dame. We get that. Newt Rockney, George Gibb, Ara Parsegian, Joe Thiesman, yeah, on and on. Joe Montana. Notre Dame, we understand. And I get the Canes thing too. Seriously, because Oregon, you ain't won anything yet, so go win something, and then I can put you in this conversation. But the Canes, with their 5 national championships and should be 6, they've got a legitimate argument. Just goes, you know what? What does the guy say in Slapshot? Right? Piss on old time hockey. And I feel Strother Martin's character, I feel like somebody's like piss on old time Notre Dame. And there is something to be said about that. Don't you let Marcus Freeman say that, because he doesn't understand why they're getting dissed. Like I said, primary season, fun stuff. Anyways, I don't want to get too deep in a tangent. Got some other things to cover before we move on to something else. Okay, Colorado finishes Big 12 play 1-8. Okay then. I could talk. I could have a whole podcast talking about Colorado, but I'm trying to make this episode not about bashing on Dion and Shaduro that much. I'll find a reason to, obviously, as I brought up in the last segment about Dylan Gabriel. Anyway, the athletic department is running a $27 million deficit heading into 2026, meaning that elsewhere around the university, there's going to be all kinds of belt tightening to help make up the shortfall. The students are going to have to pay more in incidental fees and all this other stuff. This is what I always love the wonderful people in the peanut gallery that always defend athletic departments about how sustainable they are. I go, if they're so sustainable, then why is Colorado's athletic department? Because they had to spend all this money on NIL, paying Shador, paying Shiloh, paying Hunter, and so on. And now we're starting to see what Mr. Ford and I always talk about when he comes into the Foxhole, about how sustainable this is. Where are we at? 2025. Can't wait to see where we are if we get to 2029 with the way this crazy world is going. What this is all going to look like for these athletic programs who are already starting to show heavy fatigue as far as the financial responsibilities that come with this new normal. Yeah, we'll be diving more into this for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about North Carolina here soon too. I'll save that for another as we're running a little bit long in this segment. I am digging the ACC SEC challenge in basketball. I love that these conferences. I wish you could do it in football, but they're too fraidy cats. We're talking about aftershocks, the whole scheduling. Like, you're more likely to schedule Chump Latchin State than play anybody tough. But I do love in hoops where your RPI, your strength of schedule, blah, 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 that actually means something in terms of getting you into the tournament. And it's better that you play somebody. And I love that these conferences are doing that. More power to you. Also, a shout out to Iowa State's Audi Crooks. Man, that woman's balling. Every time I turn around, she's like, 48 points and 20 rebounds or 45 points. Props to her. What a season she's having. All right, folks, we are up and running as far as episode 291 is concerned. When we return, we'll talk about something you should probably know. See ya on the other side. All right. Gotta love your spaghetti western meets your gypsy theme. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Sitting here cold chilling on a Thursday. Big NFL matchup tonight with the Lions and the Cowboys. Both in dire need of a win. Always like when we get a marquee matchup on a Thursday. Yeah, there's big games coming up this week as I'm watching first things first out of the corner of my eye. Enjoying watching Nick Wright and Chris Broussard in agony over their Chiefs and Ravens. Meanwhile, Wiles is sitting here giggling, peacocking like Tom Brady just walked back in the door. But Tom Brady 2.0 and Drake May. Anyways, we'll talk more about that when we get to the No Fun League segment at the end of the show. And in the meanwhile, let's get to one of the favorite segments in this podcast. Something you should probably know, or things that occurred this past week in the world of sports you might want to know, or even think to care about. Well, what do we got here? Well. We have the penultimate race in F1. Yeah. Over there. In one of my places, I won't say one of my favorite places I've never been, but since they own PSG, I'll just go. I was going to say we're one of my favorite ownership groups. Plies their trade, but the Qatari Grand Prix. Mad Max wins it. The takeaway here, Lando Norris fourth, so it's going to come down to the final race. And what seemed like a runaway for Mr. Norris and Mr. Piastri, now it's coming down to the last race where Mad Max could basically steal victory from defeat as far as coming back to win this title. It should be a lot of fun. Be looking forward to all of that when this all wraps up. Fun stuff, man. So hopefully there's not too much going on this weekend, which there is, but I'm looking forward to that. Okay. And my ongoing critique about boxing, which is kind of interesting, that Max Kellerman returning to call fights, and basically speaking of Stephen A. Smith, kind of in the Max Kellerman kind of way that he does thing, and that mealy mouth voice of his, kind of calling out Stephen A. Smith for basically pushing him into exile all these years. I know I got sidetracked there, but it just made me think about all of these talking heads and always finding their way into the sports news cycle. But speaking of Max's, the trade that he's known for, boxing, I find it really interesting that we have, yet again, another fight we should care about. And this is like next month. So you have Teofimo Lopez, who's 21 and 1. He's going to be fighting the champ Shakur Stevenson, who's 24 and 0. This is 140 pound showdown, welterweights. And once again, no buzz. Back in the day, you got somebody 24 and 0 and 24 and 1. You're excited about this, you would think. But I gotta wonder, because this is going to be on DAZN or DAZN, which very few people have, as we saw with the Club World Cup. Not too many people have a DAZN subscription. So who the hell's even going to know about this? I mean, I'll know about it because I'm always putting bullet points together for this podcast. But I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. And I was kind of watching Colin. This which I always reference him because it's usually on while I'm doing my professional stuff. First things first, the same thing. It was kind of referencing how college football is kind of turned into the way boxing was, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when the Bob Arams and Don Kings sort of ran things. Well, I'm like going, boy, if you like the sweet science, you really long for those days because these are two really good fighters, and it's not going to move the needle one bit. Over in UFC, at least they're trying to get a little. They're trying to get a little spice on their veggies. So, UFC heavyweight champ Tom Aspinall, he's still not medically cleared to return to the octagon. He had to fight with Cyril Gane, got his eye poked not too long ago. And Aspinall is just like, you know what? F this Cyril Gane guy. He's a cheater. And I'm sitting there thinking about hearing that and his disdain for him. We're all here for all that. Because obviously you're doing something to move the needle and get on the radar, unlike boxing. No, pumping up Jake Paul fights is not pumping up boxing. As I was talking about on Aftershocks, how somebody was thanking Jake Paul for saving boxing. Yeah. Okay. I also talked about on Aftershocks Sid the Kid and Mondo Duplantis, winning athlete of the year awards in track and their dominance. Worth bringing up again because I don't think we are appreciating true greatness existing in the shadows. So we had some fun this week. Serena, she entered the testing pool. And so this basically, I thought it was like, hey, she's being drug tested. But no, I guess it's the testing pool. And everybody, started, licking their chops. And all the talking heads were happy because, hey, we got another story that's going to enhance our brand, Serena's comeback. And in typical Serena fashion, oh, hell, you fools are crazy. I ain't coming back. She probably did it just to get a laugh, which makes me now wonder, if she didn't pull the whole thing with the cotton installation at the Ritzy Hotel in New York, if that wasn't to get a laugh out of somebody, because this was pretty funny when she's just like, y'all crazy, man. Your internet. Yeah, the internet's been wild this week. But yeah, so apparently Serena is not planning on a comeback at 44. Unlike Tiger, who wants to come back, but we just don't think medically it's a good thing. Stay on the shelf, both of you. Like I said on Aftershocks the other day, enjoy the good life. By the way, check out Aftershocks. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Who doesn't need to make a comeback because in her world it always is about her. Our girl Michaela Sheffrin remaining unbeaten as she posts win number 104 all time on her home turf in Colorado. You go, girl. You keep rocking it. We like that. Okay. Now, I find this really interesting. So, the Olympics are coming up really quick. The Winter Olympics, that is. And they're going to be in Italy. I've been seeing this out of the corner of my eye and really wasn't paying attention to the ramifications. But apparently, right now, as of December 4th, 12:35 p.m., there's no plan B for Olympic hockey if the arena, which is being built in Milan, is not completed in time for the games. Wow. Now, we know how things work in this lifetime, and somehow this will get done by the time the games start. Hopefully. But I'll be really curious if it doesn't and you just say, well, F it, there's going to be no hockey at the 26 Winter Games. Yeah, you just can't make this shit up, can you? Yeah. Okay, what else do we got here? We're cooking. How about this national poll that says The Blind Side is the number one sports movie of the 21st century? And I just went, oh my God, gag me with a spoon. Okay, I admit, I'm a boomer. I'm old school. I grew up watching movies like the original Longest Yard, North Dallas 40, Semi Tough, stuff like that. So this cheeseball stuff like The Blind Side and Remember the Titans of Rudy being called the greatest sports movie of all time just makes me want to throw up. What's the best sports movie for y'all? Maybe I'll put a poll on the Spotify. Maybe I'll do that just out of curiosity or something like that. Or drop me an email, ftinfx at gmail.com. That's right, ftinfx at gmail.com. Or give a call, 541-525-0869. But The Blind Side, yeah, it's a great story. And now the fact that there's been a falling out between the dude and the family is probably not as true as they made it look. Yeah. Yeah. Give me some North Dallas 40 or even any given Sunday over this hogwash. Stuff like that. Sorry. Uh, I think the softball league draft that was being televised on ESPN, I was like, yeah, wow. Other than boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, and close friends, who the hell's watching the AUSL draft? Leave it to ESPN. With all the hoops and all the other things that you could be showing, you had time for that. Okay. Hey, I'm not hating, just saying. Then you've got George Foreman, the late George Foreman. His 68 Olympic gold medal, he's waving the flag, iconic moment in Olympic history, the little flag that he had. That's hitting the auction block. And I wonder, given the wide range of things that have hit the sports memorabilia auction block since I've been doing this, how much George Foreman's 1968 gold medal is going to fetch. We all like the grill, we all like the comeback. It's going to be interesting because I've seen certain people where I thought it should be more than others where it's like, but with Georgie, I don't know. All right, folks, we're cooking. When we return, we will talk some hardwood on the other side. Alrighty, welcome back to the Foxhole. Faithful host here, Ken Harlan. Truly ice cold chilling on a Thursday afternoon, December 4th, right before the college conference championship weekend. Big NFL weekend, MLS Cup. That's a great NBA action. Where are we going now? Let's talk a little hardwood, shall we? Unfortunately, we got to start off with a somber one here, man. Got a bum to hear this one. Eldon Campbell, former Laker, later with the Pistons, who he got a ring with. Big start Clemson, I believe he still holds the record for most points in Tiger history. Passed away at 57. Eldon was an interesting character for me. And I'm a Lakers fan. I don't hide that. Um, he was on those post Kareem teams. When the Lakers kind of were fighting their way through the wilderness in the post HIV era. And Elton was classic to me because as far as basketball goes, long before Kwame Brown, Elton was hands of stone. That guy couldn't catch a layup. I mean, an alley oop, uh, an interior pass to save his life, to save anyone's life. And he used to just frustrate the hell out of me. And you can only imagine when he went to the Pistons and got that ring with them against the Lakers, how it was all too much. But I was happy for him, though. Seriously, I was. And he definitely, in terms of those post Kareem and then, the post HIV stuff, he was one of those guys we counted on. So, anyway, our condolences go out to his family and people and stuff. The legendary Hands of Stone has left the building. Okay. Across the way, as they see in The Wire. Oh, man, what is going on down there in Inglewood? LAC, the Clippers. That's right. The Los Angeles Clippers. Parting ways with CP3 after a midnight session in Atlanta. Apparently, Chris and Ty Lue weren't talking, which, given the strong-willed personalities that both of them are, I can see that. The Clippers being a complete dumpster fire, even though Chris Paul's only, I think, averaging 2 points. I don't know how many minutes he's getting. But he wasn't happy with the no accountability. Basically, like folks mailing it in. And I guess it got contentious with him and Lou to the point where they weren't speaking over the last couple of weeks. And Lawrence Frank had to come in and mediate. And at the end, he just said, okay, we're just going to cut bait with you. Which is probably a good thing because sometimes you can't go back home. And it's pretty clear that the Clippers are kind of becoming like the Redskins under Daniel Snyder. Even though you could arguably say this is just Sterling 2.0. But I want to say this: why bring up the Snyder's Redskins? Because you get all these overpriced targets that basically say, I got the money, we good, and you don't accomplish anything. And so I just feel like Ballmer's regime with the scandal, with the team falling apart, and now this, clip gonna clip. Once and always the Clippers, and why they will always be the Clippers. And as a Laker fan, you know this makes me smile from here to the Atlantic. Because this is what they do. And I'm giggling all the way. All the trash Ballmer's talked about. Built that beautiful palace with his own money. Props to you there. But, right, you could take the pig that's been swimming up there out in the slop, outside when you're driving into, to the coast and you go through Sutherland, you see that pig swimming in the slop. You can clean that pig off, make it all shiny, and it's still a pig. And this is the Clippers, baby. Okay. I couldn't resist that. Then we've got this whole thing with Giannis. Just was watching a little bit about this on First Things First. Boy, what a mess. Not only did he get hurt last night in a big win over all of a sudden Pistons who were losing games, but he's kind of looked around the room, because I talked about this on Aftershocks when I asked the question, what was more surprising, Boston's start or Doc and the Bucks just not that mediocre would be nice. And Giannis must have heard me because he's like going, damn, that kid in the Foxhole, he's on to something there. Because apparently him and his agent, they have now told the Bucks, hey, we're thinking about our future. It's time for us to possibly reevaluate. Which we said, and which when the beginning set of the year, the basketball year, then we had Alec Ford, and he reiterated the same thing. He's going to look around the room and just say, nah, man. So now, the real jockeying begins. Where does he land? There's some interesting places. I just saw an interesting trade that Nick Wright proposed. Really makes a lot of sense. With Atlanta, where they would, get rid of Trae Young because they're doing well without him, and they would end up getting 4 picks, 4 number 1s. I mean, the Knicks, obviously. I mean, I keep seeing all this stuff on Laker pages. That ain't happening, Laker Nation. No way you can make that work. So stop. Don't even think about it. San Antonio, possibly. Houston. There are some interesting places if Giannis wants to be that guy. He'd have to package his bro and all that other stuff, I'm sure, with him. But whatever the case may be, there's some probably workable scenarios where the salaries would probably work. So, something to keep an eye on. And I mentioned, I was talking about the Mavericks earlier. Cooper Flag dropping 35 on the aforementioned Clippers. Good to see that he's flexing. Saw that Gordon had 52 last night for the Nuggets, and that's what he's the third Nugget to have a 50 game already, and we aren't even at Christmas yet. Wow. Go figure. What else is going on? Well, the Sixers, I mean, Embiid returned for a half a second. Sixers win back-to-back games, but they lose back-to-back games. Excuse me. I'm gonna say Embiid comes back. The Sixers are still kind of. Let's see here. Take a quick look here. Yeah. Well, they're not doing that bad. They're 11-9. They're 5-5 in their last 10. You know, Celtics are 12-9. They're still in the play-in tier, so all good there. But the key thing there is, if you notice Tyrone Maxey, who every time I see him in the commercial, I always think it's JD5, and it's like, no, that's not Jaden Daniels. That's Tyrese Maxey, He's been balling out. This is just saying, you know what? Embiid, PG-13 or Pandemic B, you all do your thing. Because I'm going to go get mine. Good for him. Let's see here. You had LeBron sitting, and then Luka and AR-15 cooking the Pelicans. Who doesn't do that? And of course, LeBron comes back the next night, preserves the streak. Talked about that in Aftershocks. And they lose to the Suns. Yeah, things are good for the Lakers nonetheless. And LeBron talking about their effort. I'm like, gee, we don't really have these stinker games unless you're on the floor. Is there a correlation there, LeBron? You tell me. Zion, gee, this isn't news to anybody. He will be out the next 3 weeks with a grade 2 abductor strain. Man. Boy, the Pelicans, what a sight for sore eyes. And what are we going to do with this Zion guy? I mean, how long is it going to be before him and Greg Oden are sitting at the bench in NBA arenas, eating hot dogs, laughing about what could have been? That's what it's looking like. Okay. Oklahoma City is 21-1, getting stronger after defeating the Warriors. Only thing that happened to Oklahoma City is they stopped themselves somehow. Otherwise, this is a juggernaut, people. Right? There's nothing to argue what we're seeing. 21-1, And they are only getting stronger with Mr. Williams coming back into the fray. Celtics continue to impress. They took down the Knicks after I did the Aftershocks episode, so now they're 12-9. Very impressive without their number one guy. Okay. WNBA and the Players Union agreed to a 40-day extension. Still trying to hammer this out. And that's a good thing. There's still plenty of time before the season starts. Plenty of time for Sophie, Lexi, and Caitlin to get bikini shots down there in Mexico or wherever it is they need. Now that we're that time of the year, all good there. Plenty of time for Angel Reese's people to say, but we're more popular. All that's good. Take your time. As long as you are realizing what's at stake here, as I talked about in Aftershocks the other day, cool. Give it another 40 days. I don't think either side wants to go over the cliff. So we are where we are. And the fact that we're talking and we're trying to be adults and there's been a muzzle on some of the loudmouths, just like saying, hey, cool it. We're trying to, make something where we all get paid and everything's all good. We don't want to blow this thing up. Okay, time will tell. All right, folks, that's what's happening on the hardwood. We'll go grab a soccer ball and talk some pitch side stuff when we return. All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Foxtrotting in a Foxhole, episode 291, the third of season 10, third episode of season 10, excuse me. Yeah. So, let's go pitch side. Big week. Obviously, the MLS Cup coming up on Saturday. More on that in a second. But the World Cup draw is finally here. All the blustering, all the talk, all the hype. Well, the countdown really begins after tomorrow when we find out who's playing in what group, who's going to be in the group of death, so on. Got Alexi Lawless making the rounds. He was on calling on first things first because obviously Fox has the draw, so they're very, very excited. Made some interesting points about the United States men's national team, right? Once you separate the man from his politics and the fact that just most of you all don't like him, especially those of you in the soccer peanut gallery, but I find him to be someone grounded when it comes to the United States men's national team and what we should expect out of them in these windows. There's obviously announced the friendlies for next year, the big tune-ups as we get on the precipice of the World Cup. They're playing Belgium, Portugal, and whatnot. And I like his perspective. I think I feel the same way. Where there's reason to be optimistic, but it's a guarded optimism with this bunch. We've seen a lot of unflattering results, but every time we're ready to shovel dirt on these guys, they string together some results where you go, hey, this might be working. And there's no doubt, just based on the small sample we have, that Potch has infused life into this bunch and is sending a different message. Not sure how CP10 is going to factor into this. I think we all acknowledge that he is our best player. But I do like that this team is sort of gelled while he's been off to the side. And incorporating him back into the mix, it's going to be interesting. But anyhow, Alexei is right. We have to get out of the group stage. We got to make it into the knockout round. Anything less will be a nightmare and a total failure. And yeah, I do believe that Mauricio is planting the seeds for something better and truly building a soccer culture on the international level where we can be respected. Now, how long he's going to be here, anyone's guess as far as seeing that vision come to fruition. Yeah. Okay. This World Cup, Mr. Messi, he says he's still uncommitted to playing in the World Cup in 2026. Yeah, okay, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'm going to sell you. If you're still playing at MLS and you claim you're going to play in MLS through 2028, your ass is playing in the World Cup for Argentina and defending your title. Stop it already, Leo. Absolutely stop it. I mean, that would be the upset on 2026's scorecard if he does not play with Argentina as they look to defend their title. Come on, Leo. But then again, when you're where you're at in Leo's career, you might as well create a little suspense and have a laugh. Why the hell not? You know, keep the soccer peanut gallery and all the soccer talking heads busy with speculation. I don't have a problem at all with it. He's getting ready to throw a big party in South Beach Saturday, as I talked about on Aftershocks. Him and Thomas Miller breaking bread again like they did in the 2014 World Cup. It's going to be a heck of a matchup. It is on Fox. I was wondering whether it was FS1, but there'll be a chance for plenty of eyeballs, especially it being a I think it's going to be on 11:30 Pacific time, 2:30 on the East. So that's good, and it's on Fox, regular Fox. So fantastic. Highly encourage you all to tune it in. So there's no Apple wall to prevent you. These two teams are fun. They already had tangled earlier in the year in the League's Cup, with Vancouver getting the spice at that point. So yeah, people, it's on like Donkey Kong, okay? MLS Cup final, Vancouver Whitecaps and Inter Miami. Okay, speaking of MLS, you have, well, like I said, I gave San Diego their props the other day. Good ride, but I was going to say Hugo Lloris, speaking of World Cup winners, he is re signing with LAFC. He feels like he's got a good situation with his family, and it's fun playing for LAFC, especially now that he's got his homie, Mr. Sun, chilling with Denny Bowenga. He's getting long in the tooth, but he's still a pretty good goalie. I know LAFC's whiny fan base trying to find ways to pick everything apart, trying to break. Well, he could do this and that. Dude, you got a World Cup goalie, a World Cup winner in goalie. Shut up already and deal. And just sometimes the ball doesn't go your way. Real though. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go. Let's go around the globe. PSG's Desiree Doué wins the UEFA Golden Boy Award, especially the young upcomer. Good talent. It's too bad he's hurt right now. All that it's kind of funny how the Golden Boy. I have a feeling if certain triggered people in the United States knew it was called that, they'd be saying you got to change that. You can't say Golden Boy. Yeah, I know I'm having too much fun here. Okay, speaking of Desiree's PSG, they lose at Monaco 1-0, coupled with Marseille and Toulouse tying. Guess who was leading Ligue 1 after 14 match days? RC Lens, baby. You didn't have that on your scorecard, and as the renowned PSG social influencer on YouTube, PSG INT, has pointed out, it is interesting that the three times, or the previous times, I think it's three times, that PSG did not win the L1 title since the Qataris took over in 2011. They were trailing after match day 14 by 1 or 2 points. So something to keep an eye on as far as, again, PSG not only hold on to its UCL title, do they get knocked off their perch in League One? Yeah, I know. Over in Merrill, England, a lot of action. The Gunners had an interesting week. 1-1 tying with Chelsea. Chelsea losing the lead yesterday 3-1. How about that game with City and Fulham? It was like 5-1, and then City had to hang on to win 5-4. Manchester United doing its thing. The Reds still struggling as they drew with Sunderland. And we got to ask what's going on with the defending champs. All of a sudden, they don't even look ordinary. They look pretty mediocre at this point, I think would be a fair argument to say about Liverpool. The folks at Anfield, not happy at all. Fair to say. Okay, what else do we have before I let you go here? Mouse is not cooperating. Yeah, Real Madrid. They draw with Girona. They won yesterday, but I believe Barca now leads the LL table. They're going back and forth because Barca beat Atletico Madrid on Tuesday. Big week for them is the prodigy himself is talking about the golden boy. Mr. Yamal was on 60 Minutes talking about how he wants to be a unifier of all through his beautiful skills. Yeah. You know, the fanboys really had a field day with that. Bayern leading the Bundesliga by 8. Basically a stroll through the park for them, which it is most years. How about over in Liga MX, where you have Toluca leading a tight MLX table? I mean, there's like 4 teams right now within 3 points of each other, so that's a lot of fun there. So anyway, tune into the MLS Cup this weekend. That's going to be a lot of fun. Big things happening as they get ready to pivot away from this type of schedule to an international one. Not quite yet, but the World Cup next year, as I've already pointed out, is going to give us kind of a nice soft landing as to what that's going to look like. Interesting times, domestic soccer, folks. Beautiful thing, really. All right, we're cooking. When we return, we'll be back with some Nightfall of Diamonds. Oh, yeah, we are daydreaming, watching First Things First, the overtime segment, and they were talking about Shador, so hey, my attention span definitely giving the thumbs down to, wow, Tua, Dart, Gino, Cam Ward, and JJ McCarthy. Oh my goodness. Oh, more about all those guys in a minute. Let's do some Nightfall of Diamonds. Let's get ourselves going here with a little happy birthday to Fish. What is that, 42? Started in 83, depending on what day. That's always sort of up for debate with some folks as far as when Fish actually started in 1983, the year I graduated from high school. So it's been a hot minute. Good that they're still playing at a very high level. Looking forward to the New Year's run. And very excited about the announcement that they will be embarking on a 9-show run at the Spear next spring, following up on their run a couple of years ago. So that should be kind of interesting to see what they do after their initial run and then 2 subsequent extended runs by the Snooze Factory, aka Dead and Company. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the visuals. I might actually make an appearance. This might be the excuse I've been looking for to make a pilgrimage to the Spear. So we'll see how that all goes. Getting some weird noise in my microphone, so I apologize for that after switching up here. Ooh, man. Yeah, 9 nights. That's going to be crazy. Is there anything else happening on the hippie front that I should talk about other than doing a slight upgrade and actually going back into some of the jams, doing a review of my favorite bands in that genre from like 96 to 2000. A lot of wonderful shows, and that's been a lot of fun. Okay, let's talk some baseball. Well, nobody's talking, but baseball could be in store for a big fall if there's a lockout in 2027. Yes, that's, a year and a little change away. But it's serious stuff. We all know what happened in 94. No, it didn't kill the sport, but it basically took a bunch of guys getting juiced up like those balloons that you see on the Thanksgiving Macy's parade to save the sport from all the damage that the lockout did in 2024. And the conversations are going to be endless to institute or not institute a salary cap or find a way to level the playing field. All kinds of discussions that are going on as far as, well, what I would do or what I think they should do, or there's going to be some incentive for those who just want to count their money and not actually build their team. For every Rockies, there's someone like Mr. Cohn who spends lots of money and the team has not quite lived up to expectation. Fair to say. And I get it. If the Dodgers or some of these other big money teams pretty much win every World Series for the rest of the decade, people are going to get sour. And some of this renewed excitement about MLB might dissipate. And we definitely know a strike would be absolutely cataclysmic. A little different landscape than it was in the 90s. And I'm not so sure, well, hell, with the pandemic and we made people thirsty, there'll be some forgiveness. But it's just not the road MLB needs to go down, if you ask me. Okay, speaking of Vegas, talking about fishing the Spear, see the A's basically going next level in Sin City. They've opened up that immersive experience. Got all kinds of good scale models of the stadium and giving all these, simulation views of what it's going to look like from your seat and things like that. It just makes me laugh because all the doomsayers sell the team, the green shirt, and this is never going to happen. This is just no financing. And I was sitting there laughing at the skeptics. And you can go back and check the various episodes as far as me chronicling this whole exodus out of Oakland via Sacramento to Las Vegas. Having the doomsday clock at 23 hours and 55 minutes and whatnot. And I've had my moments where I was skeptical too. But I always did say, look at the Raiders example. If you know anything about the Raiders, whether they're in Oakland or Los Angeles, the Javises, obviously football people, Al, Mark inheriting it. Basically what Al built and stole it from Wayne Valley, then built it up. But Al's not a deep-pocketed person. And so the Raiders have always been a shoestring operation, even when they're in the zenith of the NFL making good money. And I remember going with my brother and former sister-in-law and going to get season tickets, and it was almost like you were going to lockup because they had season tickets when they first came back to Oakland in the mid-90s. And I was just thinking, this is an NFL franchise? But you go to Vegas, and the money people get involved. They got nice crib, the Dark Star Allegiant. Marks owns the Aces. Has this nice big Monse, 15 million or something like that, hosting starlets. Vegas. That's why I knew with the A's. F1, whatever the case may be, it is a sports hub. And it's tough on the locals. I get that. Great for opposing teams' fans as far as a great destination and away day. But anybody who thought this Oakland thing to Vegas wasn't happening, yes, it's a hiccup in Sacramento and it sucks because everything's second rate. But Vegas is going to be box office. You can already see that coming, whether you like it or not. The Rays, they say the Tropicana will be ready for the 2026 opener. I still got to ask myself, how long are they going to stay in that cracker box? How long are they going to stay in Tampa St. Pete? No, it's a great territory, and MLB doesn't want to abandon it. But Portland, Salt Lake City, I think, are much more opportunistic destinations at this point in time, what they're willing to do and what they're offering. Clock's running. Okay. Dodgers are going to bring back Mr. Rojas, World Series hero. 1-year deal, $5.5 million deal. If you're a Dodger fan, which I am, you like that. Keeping the band together. There's always some risk in that. But there's something about the Dodgers and some of these role players that are helping them build out this dynasty. And keeping this guy for a year at $5 million in a world where there is no salary cap and he's willing to go for that, do that deal 30 times in a week. Hell yeah. Okay. How about Boston pitcher Sonny Gray? He used to play on the Yankees, but he says it's really easy to hate the Yankees. And I gotta think that's gotta be one of the most mind-exploding comments I've heard in a while. Because yes, while it is true, it is easy to hate the Yankees and the Dodgers. You play for the Red Sox? Last time I checked, it's just as easy, if not more, to hate them than most teams in MLB and all of sports, given the spew fest that goes on with that club every time it does something. And even when it wasn't doing anything. Oh, the angst being the Boston Red Sox fan. So, Sonny Gray, I get where you're coming from. And you played pinstripes, and it probably wasn't the best experience for you when you were there. But come on. You probably should just take a mulligan and just not say anything, especially when it comes to the Red Sox. Just saying. Speaking of Mr. Cohen, he gets the green light to open the casino that he's talking about, part of the big experience. I mean, it's going to be an incredible footprint because you got the soccer stadium, tennis, Mets, and then you're going to have 3 casinos. Just basically, that entertainment district I'm always speaking about colleges. Well, this is, next level what Mr. Cohen is doing. So look out, world, as far as the game day experience going to see the Mets. Or even NYCFC, down the road here. Yeah, more reasons to gamble. Lovely. What could go wrong there? Hey, we'll stay in New York. This has to make all the people, the warm and fuzzy people, happy. How about our man Aaron Judge opening up a cat rescue center in the Bronx? That has to be an aww. Hell yeah, taking care of our feline friends. Good for you, 99. Clap, 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 clap from all around. Okay. Quick ride on the Zamboni, taking the ride on the ice around the ice rink of life. This is a quick one because the power rankings remain the same. Usual suspects. The Avs on top, the Canes, the Jets, the Ducks. Yeah. All right, folks, that's the Nightfall of Diamonds. When we come back, we will do a closer look. See you in a second. Whoa. Should just noticed my slider, so it was loud in the previous segment. Apologize for that. Oh my days. Alrighty here. A little flexibility going on over here in the Foxhole. As we get to the 2:30 hour, still trying to figure out whether or not I can make this presentation. Friend in town, doing a wonderful thing on the classics, but the weather and trying to get this podcast done at NFL tonight. Yeah, Thursday's a little more jam packed than usual. Okay, time to opinionate, editorialize, talk a little trash. You know, time for a closer look. Yeah, what am I going to start with? Let's start off with the NFL posting insane ratings over the Thanksgiving window. I think the Chiefs Cowboys, highest rated game all time or something like that. And what makes me think about this, just going back to when I first started this podcast, I would tell you about people I knew, some friends of the show that were skeptical of the NFL's long-term viability. The social justice warriors, the time when I started this podcast, that all those old, mean, bitter white men that run the NFL were going to reap what they sow. Yeah, they're reaping what they sow, all right. Ratings that are off the chart. A product that people cannot get enough of. That Colin Kaepernick's going to have the last laugh. He's going to end up owning the NFL. Cap can't even get any shade thrown at him at this point. People don't even bother saying, hey, he still wants a job. Somebody gets hurt. This is one of the first seasons I can remember in a long time where his name really hasn't come up in terms of, hey, he's available. Think about that. Now, going into the season, there were still some people trying to keep his name alive. But since the games have started, and there have been quarterbacks hurt all over the place, the Vikings willed out some guy nobody will never know of this past weekend. Just amazing how the perception has changed. The NFL never does. I've argued long before I was doing podcasts about the Teflon coating the Shield seems to have. You know, whether it's Dr. Adamalawalu with the concussions, whether it's Cap, whether it's rank and file behaving like a bunch of juveniles in heat, doesn't matter. NFL just shrugs it off. And it's just cracking me up that it continues to get bigger and bigger. Well, the product, at times you have to wonder about, it doesn't matter. Marks, you did not live long enough to see the rise of the NFL, the EPL, and these big leagues, and these fan bases who ride till they die and beyond if they can. It's one of the truly fascinating phenomenons of the 20th and 21st centuries, at least if you ask me. Just an opinion, but it's pretty cool. And if I could truly explain it, especially the incredible growth that's occurred since the pandemic. I mean, this is sports in general, in just terms of you took it away from us. Damn it, I'm gonna once I get it back, I'm gonna love you more than I ever loved you, and we're never gonna break up, and that's what we're seeing. Get me even started with with the nuttiness in college football. Yeah, all right. It's just it. Props to the NFL. So where else am I going with a closer look? Okay, I talked about this briefly earlier with Mr. Kalani Satake choosing to remain in Provo as opposed to going to state college. It's a big deal. Speaks volumes on so many different levels. I think Penn State, it's a cautionary tale in this new normal era. And obviously, survived the whole thing with Joe Pa and Sandusky, which was not an easy thing to do. And you give James Franklin a lot of props for bringing stability there. As a results thing, especially results against the teams that matter, and how you're viewed nationally when you don't get it done in big games. Good grief. Nobody ever bothers me unless I'm podcasting. But anyway, how you perform in these big games. And now, Penn State, they're on an island. They've got their blue blood status, but as many people are saying, this may not be a great destination. I mean, look how you did James Franklin. Other coaches seeing that. I mean, I only buy that so far because you have to get it done. The era of Marvin Lewis, excuse me. The era of having coaches like Marvin Lewis around for a while and tolerating without getting results, that's in the rearview mirror. It's in the rearview mirror, straight up. And so I just love how Penn State is in this case where you have a guy clearly. Now, we know there's lots of money at BYU, Provo, Utah, whatever the case may be. I'm not even going there. All right, so money, I'm sure they could pony up. And they did in terms of what he's been building there. And apparently he had talked to Lavelle Edwards' wife. Lavelle Edwards, basically the late Lavelle Edwards, who was the Don in Provo as far as the BYU program was concerned. So that part I kind of understand, but I don't when it comes to the brand. I mean, it's obvious to me why Lane Kiffin chose Baton Rouge as opposed to staying in Oxford. And I even think at this point he would have taken Baton Rouge over Gainesville. That's my gut feeling. Even a lot of folks think had Florida not walked away, that was the better job. I don't think it is. I think if you're brand conscious, which most of these guys are, I know Lane is, maybe James Franklin wasn't. But it's Penn State. So I don't get too far off the tracks. Let me keep it focused on Penn State. How are you feeling if somebody, a good candidate, but not necessarily viewed in the same desirable level, let's say, of a Lane Kiffin or a Dan Lanning, or if someone like Debo was on the market? Yeah. As they say, those tiers, right? And so somebody on a tier that I think lower in terms of the wow factor and who you are. So it's a cautionary tale, isn't it? That you didn't achieve the heights you wanted to under Brother James Franklin. But now look at you. And everybody in the big kids' room just sitting there, sipping on their cherry flavored Kool Aid, eating their brownie, giggling at you, just like going hee 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 hee. I'm sure they'll find, somebody adequate. Because after all, isn't that how Indiana pulled off Coach Sig? And it may require them to be a little creative. But it's always interesting when you look at somebody that has a brand like Penn State having to get creative to find somebody that can get them to where they want to be. Fair to say? All right, folks. I'm rambling, but you get the point. Cautionary tale in Penn State and the NFL posting some really crazy ratings just to show you how football nutty we are. All right, we'll be back. Speaking of football nutty, to get you out of here with the NFL report and some TMCA time. See you momentarily. Alrighty, welcome back. Closing you out here on a fabulous Thursday. Foxtrotting in the Foxhole, episode 291. NFL time. So we got the Cowboys and the Lions coming up here a little bit later. Exciting stuff there. Let's start with the Lions. So the big deal was Frank Ragnow, who's been missing, their highly decorated center, is trying to make a comeback. Came in and took his physical, and they determined that his hamstring was in such bad shape it wouldn't be worth the effort to get it rehabbed and get him ready for a playoff run, which is kind of unfortunate because right now they're on the outside looking in with a big game against Dallas tonight, and they could use his presence. Yeah, they need to get Laporta back. They're really missing that guy. Amon Ross, St. Brown as well. I talked on Aftershocks about the Bills slamming Pittsburgh and the crazy stuff that's happening in the Steel City. Basically, Mike Tomlin, the watch on him has moved to DEFCON 2. A lot of frustration with Steeler Nation. But I had more time on my hands, and I do have time on my hands. I would have probably listened to Pittsburgh radio this week just to hear what people are saying. And obviously, a big game this week with the Ravens. 6-6 for the division lead. Pretty much, I think the loser of this game, they're probably cooked. Big Ben jumps off the ship, though. Big Ben says, hey, maybe you should take the Penn State job. Yeah, I think after what happened to Belichick, Tomlin wants none of that smoke. But it's interesting that Big Ben, who's never afraid to chime in, has joined those that are mutiny on the bounty, throwing the locals overboard. I mean, he's making a lot of money. He's made a lot of money. Pretty sure there are some teams out there who will take a flyer on him again. It's not boo-hoo-hoo for Mike Tomlin. I think I kind of agree with folks that think, yeah, maybe it's time for a change of scenery. Change things up a bit. Steelers waive Darius Slay. This is interesting. The Bills claim him. However, he's unsure about wanting to play, which means, from what they're saying on TV, I really want to go back to the Eagles. Don't take me, Buffalo. Philadelphia versus Buffalo. That's an interesting conversation, especially this time of year. I don't know, man. If the Bills wanted me and there's playing time involved, I'd be interested. And I'm not so sure how excited I would be about walking into the Philadelphia locker room right now, given all the chaos going on in the city of brotherly love with that team. The Chargers beat the Raiders. Takeaway here: Justin Herbert breaking his wrist on his non-throwing hand, had surgery, is questionable. We know that guy is a tough hombre, so my money is we will see him take the field when the Chargers play. So Sunday? And actually, I see on TV update, which probably tells me he's going to play. Mm-hmm. So the 49ers chilled the Sidor bandwagon. Some people said he looked okay. Others, well, let's put it this way. Greg Cosell, a very reputable voice in NFL films, nephew of Howard, been analyzing tape for the last 4 decades. He basically said it wasn't good as far as Shadur's performance goes. And there's a lot of things he needs to work on. Let's not sit here and hop in the pool full of rose petals like all of the Shadur slurpers are doing. That was a really good assessment. Good win for the 49ers. They've historically had trouble when they go to Cleveland. It's not that often, but they've had problems going back to the Bill Walsh days. So that was a big win for them, getting the win there. Brock Purdy, CMC, Kittle and company starting the saddle up, keeping the pressure on the Seahawks and the Rams. Talked about the Broncos and Washington on Aftershocks. A lot to unpack with that one. Also talked about the Titans outfighting the Colts and Stroud's return. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. We're going to talk about that division. Thing that I neglected to mention the other day. I remember there was a certain talking head last week that put Cam Ward on this very bad Titans squad at the big boy table of quarterbacks. You might say that about Bryce Young, who had another amazing game as the Panthers stunned the Rams, the highly vaunted Rams. But Cam Ward at the big boy table on that terrible team, now, it ain't all his fault, but he's not lifting every voice in Tennessee. Not right now, anyways. Could happen down the road, but no, he's at the small kids table. Don't even think otherwise. Yeah, that was a big win for the Panthers. I mean, makes the Bears the number 1 seed. That's one thing, which nobody had that on their scorecard at the beginning of the year. The Ben Johnson alert, Mr. Caleb. But Charlotte being right there should Baker smoking that bowl down in Tampa stumble. Boy, December is going to be fun. You know, the Jets edging the Falcons. I was talking about this the other day. Aaron Glenn might buy himself another year after it's all said and done. My question is, instead of coming down on Aaron Glenn, you should look inside the building. Because you look at the job that Robert Saleh is doing with the 49ers defense with all the injuries. And you're sitting there thinking, if Saleh's getting buzzed, which he's going to this offseason, there will be people calling, and he'll probably get an opportunity. How bad is the Jets organization? And if things don't work out with Aaron Glenn, is it really Aaron Glenn? Or is it the shit show that Woody Johnson and his people have been mixing up over the years? Just saying. I mean, the Eagles, right now, they're not who I thought they were. I was like thinking, yeah, they're on cruise control. I'm not so sure after this Dallas loss. Depending on what happens tonight, the back of my mind, I'm thinking Dallas could catch them. Wouldn't that be something if at the end of the day the Eagles were outside looking in? And would that make Howie Roseman take a pause, even after winning the Super Bowl, and do the unthinkable in terms of Nick Sirianni? Stay tuned on that one. Okay. The Hawks, they had an easy day at the office with the Vikings. The Vikings, talk about a story that's just a wash and failure, especially this version of Skull. Kirk Cousins letting Sam Darnold walk. J.J. McCarthy, you're really, really hoping he's going to figure it out. And that's too early to label the bus tag on him. People need to stop with that nonsense. But it is interesting when you have a situation where all you needed was a semi-competent game manager with that squad for them to struggle the way that they have. Fair? Alrighty. The trucks from the foundry have rolled up to the Eagles' nest, carrying those stainless steel bowls of the smelliest varieties. They come in complimentary, regular, and XL sizes. It is TMCA time. You know, that time of the week where we give out these awards to people whose deeds during the week earn that distinction, or as we like to say, them being who they be. Okay, 3XLs, the 3 strip for Lane Kiffin for being who he is. And all this blah, 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 he did what's best for his family. Please, mofos, please. The guy's already done enough for his family. He's already made generational wealth. Stop it with this nonsense. You hear the Ryan Clarks and the RG Mees. He did what was best for his family. No, he did not. He did what was best for him and his ego. And leaving those kids in the lurch and hearing some of the things in his departure, pretty sleazy, but this has been pretty consistent ever since he entered the coaching ranks. For him to be any different, that would be a surprise. I'm going to give another 3 strip, 3 XLs to this Abdul Carter. Boy, what a peach you have turned out to be. Wanting LT's number, missing meetings, getting busted in meetings watching porn. Great example you're setting on a team that's been heading south for a while. Yeah, getting busted watching porn during a team meeting. Wow. I've heard some good ones. That's right up there. Okay. I'm going to give 2 XLs to Javier Pavia, quarterback, the brother of Vanderbilt's quarterback. This is the second time this year you've been busted for being drunk as a skunk at your brother's games, making a fool out of yourself, trying to go Casey Ryback with other fans. Yeah. Wow. And people are like, oh, come on, man. He's just ripping with his Pete, riding and dying. You ain't got to get bracelets and embarrass everybody in the process. Right? Complimentaries all around. And an XL for the Hall of Shame for the Sanders Brigade, the slippers of Dion's and Shadur. I mean, y'all are so triggered at moving the goalpost and so trying to justify both of these guys what they're doing. Ridiculous. All of a sudden, like, there's some magical entities, and that if you say anything against them, you're a hater. It's like you're either with us or you're not kind of mentality, and yeah. I'm going to give another 3 strip out. We're hitting the XLs out quite a bit the last couple of weeks. This is Jawan Jennings for the 49ers. You know, last week with the thing with Mr. Mooring, which I thought he was at fault, but it's turning out this guy is the one who is the B. You know, I mean, this guy apparently, he's applying for the role of the league's top villain, saying, hey, you know, AB's been gone for a minute. We need another receiver to step into that role. What I'm hearing from some of the players around the league, yeah, they don't think too highly of this guy. Okay. I'm going to give an XL, another one, to Roger Goodell for the disgraceful performance from the referees of Sunday. Just a snapshot of what's been going on for years. I mean, this is not, I had skin in the game, obviously, with my Commanders playing on the Broncos. But almost people across the board aghast at how bad the officiating was. And Denver got some bad calls too. It just, come on, Roger. This has gone on far too long. Fix this thing. I mean, what we saw, that wasn't even Bush League. And this is a multi-billion-dollar product with officiating that's barely good enough to be usable in a city league flag football game. Okay. I'm going to give an XL also to Jags punter Logan Cook. Trying to be Chris Partlow. You know, Chris Partlow from The Wire. You know, him and Snoop. But yeah, threatening to kill somebody. I'm like a punter. Come on, man. Right? Stop watching The Wire. Stop watching The Sopranos. You ain't that much of a G. I don't know too many punters that are going to go out and whack somebody. Okay. This is a 5 strip. It's a 10 strip, actually. This is 10 XLs. And you know, I'm not making light of this. This is more of disgust. But the jackass that went on a rampage up in Stockton, which is up in my part of the universe where I grew up in the 209, you shoot up a birthday party when they're cutting the cake and 4 people end up deceased. Man, the flames that can get as hot as they can get, they aren't even hot enough for what you deserve for that kind of nonsense. What the fuck? Pardon my language. Okay, back to something lighter. I'm gonna give a regular to Jersey Mike's for the stupid Eli Danny DeVito commercials that have truly run its course. Can we get a pause on that? I gotta give it an XL for this one. How about Home Improvement star Zach Bryan? Yeah, that dude. You know, he's got ties here in Lane County. He's living in Eugene. But getting arrested again? I mean, thank you, social media, for making all these attention whores famous. But it's just like, bro, what are you doing? You and your rodent partner. Okay. Lastly, let me give TSA an XL as well. Imposing a $45 fine for those who don't have a real ID by February 1st. Just trying to find ways to squeeze us at every frigging turn. Are we serious? All right, folks, we have reached the finish line of episode 291. Keep an eye out for Aftershocks episode, what'll it be, 19 coming up, I believe. That should be Tuesday or so. This will be out 6 to 8 days. I mean, the next episode of this. The scene's coming. SJ Gets Down has another episode out, and we're getting ready to cut another one. So a lot of things going on as far as the content that we're putting out. Myself, she, others. Anyways, big sports weekend. Enjoy some adult beverages, good company, good food. Avoid the bracelets, and we'll see you soon. Peace, y'all.